Sourdough discard pancakes. This is one of my favorite from-scratch breakfast for dinner ideas. Not only is it a favorite meal for everyone, there is typically some leftovers for breakfast the next day. This sourdough discard pancake recipe is perfect for this because it is a slightly larger recipe, and with my family of 5, we usually have enough for dinner and breakfast the next morning. That is, if we can keep from snacking on them. There is something nostalgic and cozy to me about making pancakes. I guess it's one of my favorite comfort foods. It's so warm, buttery, and sweet. Today I'm going to show you how to make these sourdough discard pancakes. This is my go-to recipe if my sourdough starter jar is nearly full and overflowing. So let's don our aprons, get into the kitchen, and craft some homemade comfort food for our families. First, I'm going to place a bowl on my scale and tare it to 0. Then I'm going to dump all my starter into the bowl. As long as there is a little left on the sides of the jar, my sourdough starter will bounce back to a bubbly active starter with just 1 feeding. As I weigh out my feedings, I know that my sourdough starter is equal parts water and flour, so I'm going to work with that in this recipe. You can use up to 900 grams of sourdough starter in this recipe. After it was all dumped out, I came out to having about 300 grams of sourdough starter, so I'm going to mill some flour and give it 300 more grams of flour and 300 grams of milk to bring it up to 900 grams. You could use water, but milk adds a little more nourishment and makes the pancakes a little more fluffy. If you're doing this ahead of time, you could leave this out to ferment the additional flour and milk for 8 hours or so, but I need this for dinner, so I'm going to proceed with making pancakes. As you can see, I've used up pretty much all my starter, but there's still some on the sides, so I know it'll bounce back. I still need an additional 300 grams of flour for this recipe, so while I get that milling, I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients. Add 3 eggs, roughly 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil or butter, a teaspoon of vanilla, a teaspoon of salt, 2 or 3 tablespoons of honey, I got my flour milled, so I'm going to add 300 grams of flour and 300 grams of milk. And don't forget the very last ingredient, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. This will help the pancakes be nice and fluffy. If you're making this a couple hours in advance, mix in the baking powder right before you fry the pancakes, or else it won't do any good. Give your batter a good stir with a whisk to mix everything thoroughly. Curiosity, do you all prefer using a scale or measuring cups? Let me know in the comments below. Now I'm going to preheat some skillets over medium heat, and and I'm going to walk you through how I feed my starter and give you proof that it will bounce back after emptying all of it out. Every time I feed my starter, I do 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. I used to eyeball it, adding a decent amount of flour and then adding enough water to make a batter-like consistency, thinking that was the simplest way to go about it. But once I started using a scale and being precise, I realized that this method was actually simpler. I get consistent results every time, and I know the proportions of flour and water in any given amount of sourdough starter, which is helpful in recipes like this one. A scale takes out the guesswork, and it's so easy to work with compared to measuring cups. I detest cleaning sourdough starter out of measuring cups, but with a scale, I can skip these extra dirty dishes. I'm going to add 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. Give it a good stir, then stick it on my counter to ferment and get nice and bubbly. I used my sourdough starter straight out of the fridge today for this recipe. If you're curious or have more questions about how I do this, I have a whole video about how I feed and maintain my sourdough starter, let it rest in the fridge, and then use it straight from the fridge. And 5 hours later, I have plenty of active starter again. Now back to the recipe. Make sure you add some oil, about 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil or butter, into your preheated pans to keep the pancakes from sticking. I like to spread it around so that it coats the bottom evenly. All you cast iron lovers out there, don't be aghast. Yes, I typically do season my pans. I just didn't the last time I used this pan. Once the pans are nice and hot, use a measuring cup or ladle to ladle out about 1/4 cup portions of batter for each pancake onto the hot skillets. When you start seeing bubbles towards the center of the pancakes, check the underside to see if it's browning nicely. To see if the other side is done, check for the nice browning again, or tap the top with your spatula, and if it bounces back, then it's done and you can take it out. I used to pile my pancakes onto a plate, but then they would get lumpy from all the steam, so I started putting them onto a cooling rack, and that helps them let off the steam better. This made 20 pancakes, which I served these for dinner tonight with some scrambled eggs and apples, so we had plenty and then some left over. We didn't quite have enough for breakfast the next day though, because we kept snacking on them before bed. They were just too tempting. Look how nice and spongy these are. These sourdough discard pancakes were definitely husband and children approved. I hope you enjoyed watching this video on how I like to use up my sourdough discard. If you haven't already, please consider liking or subscribing, and I'll see you all next time with more sourdough recipes.